Good morning, my brothers and sisters. Welcome to episode 107 of Be With Me. We're in the book of Acts, and we're looking at the story of the jailer from Philippi, the Philippian jailer, and we're looking at the moments and the hours just after he believes. Well, how did he get there? Remember, the night started by him putting Paul and his buddies in stocks after they were beaten by the magistrates and their little mob, and he doesn't dress their wounds. He puts them in stocks and makes them secure. Then at midnight there's an earthquake, and it's a miraculous earthquake in that it loosens bonds. It doesn't just knock things down, it actually loosens metal. And he's at a moment where he almost kills himself. His sword was out. That's the dramatic physical representation. And he goes from this sword to salvation, and he goes from a self-murder to seeing the majesty of God, and he goes from almost self-harm to the kingdom of heaven. So he has this whole worldview, this Copernican revolution, where he starts the night with fear of the Romans and Claudius and the authorities, and he ends it with the fear of the Redeemer, the fear of God, and I mean that in a good way. And then the story's just happy. He gets his family hears, they believe. All right, so here's the story. It's from Acts chapter 16. And I'll start with verse 31. And they said, "Believe in the Lord Jesus, and you will be saved, you and your household." And they spoke the word of the Lord to him and to all who were in his house. And he took them the same hour of the night and washed their wounds, and he was baptized at once, he and all his family. Then he brought them up into his house and set food before them, and he rejoiced along with his entire household that he had believed in God. But when it was day, the magistrates sent the police, saying, "Let those men go." And the jailer reported these words to Paul, saying, "The magistrates have sent to let you go. Therefore, come out now and go in peace." But Paul said to them, "They have beaten us publicly, uncondemned, men who are Roman citizens, and have thrown us into prison. And do they now throw us out secretly? No, let them come and take us out." The police reported these words to the magistrates, and they were afraid when they heard that they were Roman citizens. So they came and apologized to them, and they took them out, and they asked them to leave the city. So they went out of the prison and visited Lydia, and when they had seen the brothers, they encouraged them and departed. Okay, so the interesting thing about this is there's something that's physically interesting, is that some of the story happens inside the jail, then some of it happens outside the jail, and then he brings them back into the jail. So things that are outside the jail, he goes and he fetches his family, he washes wounds, he baptizes by immersion, so probably in a river, and then the jailer brings the apostles home for a meal. So that's all in verse 34. And then in verse 35, we find out that when the police went to get them, they were back in the jail. So they had been freed from this jail only to go back. So that's in like verse 34 and a half. But they find in the morning, they find him back in the jail. And the request, the demand, it's still demanding at this point. So these are already freed men that had been freed, that re-jailed themselves so that the jailer wouldn't get killed. The command comes to let these men go. Well, this is where it turns into a public proclamation, a public witness, public activity. All this has been very public. And now we get the apostles actually playing the Roman citizen card, which they haven't played, which it has some rights, which of interest terrifies the magistrates. So remember, the magistrates, they're not just police. They don't just have a physical authority. They also have some judicial authority. So they're making decisions, and the day before they made a decision that Paul and his buddies were a threat to the point that they were going to beat them with his judicial rods. So he takes what was a mob and turns it into a sort of a punitive social structure, and they beat him with rods, and then they throw him in prison. But the magistrates actually stop beating, and they they call a halt to it, and they even kind of protect them, and they say to the jailer, keep them safely. So here's the concept today, is that if you have authority, you also have you are also under authority. So the magistrates, the light bulb goes on, that they have authority, but then when they're kind of called on it, then they're afraid because they've done a bad thing. They've misacted under the authority that they have been given, and then they're afraid because they're going to be judged. They're people that are under authority. So I don't care who you are, if you're president of a country or president of a family or president of a company or president of some siblings or president of a pet, at the end of the day, we are all under authority. So if we have authority, which is all of us, we also are under authority. So the jailer the day before feared the Romans to the point that he was going to commit suicide. And today we find that the magistrates fear the Romans. Claudius was the emperor at the time, and they were afraid that they had misused their power. So then finally we get this change of tone where there's an apology, they request, they go and visit him, they escort them out personally, and then they go and visit Lydia, which is so great because she's the first European convert. That is, she's the first convert in Europe. She's actually a foreigner, an immigrant. She's actually from Asia. And we also find out that the church is growing, thriving. How do we know that? Well, now there's brothers involved. There's some men in the church as well, when we hadn't heard that to date. All right, so I'm calling today authority over equals authority under, in that it's a sober look at authority, that we've been given authority over stuff, but we also are all under authority. Now, the story is about people being authoritative over people, but we also have been given authority over things like words, what words come out of your mouth. We've also been given authority of what actions do we have, or even what are our thoughts. We've been given authority over that as well, and soberly we're going to have to all answer for that, and we're all under authority. So today's witness is both the gospel, but it's also behavior and bravery. And bravery to do, not the freedom to do anything, but to use your freedom to do the right thing. So think about your authority today. What are you authoritative over? Which is a lot of things, but remember, we're also all under authority. Thanks for listening.